In today's show, what's the best case scenario for the Portland Trail Blazers this season, and what has to go right for them to get there? Let's couch some optimism, y'all. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You are listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen. Coming at you 3 days a week in August into the first couple weeks of September. Then we'll be back 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. Get it rolling as we head into the season. But now, in our off-season publishing schedule, we're going to have a little fun today. I would call this not a true mailbag episode, but it is a listener-directed episode. A couple listeners over the last couple months have sent me emails to the email address, lockedonblazerspod@gmail.com. Great place to have a civil discourse, share ideas, and kind of get a little back and forth going to help me focus the show and make it better for you, the listener. So lockedonblazerspod@gmail.com. A couple folks, including longtime listener Tim, shout out to you, Tim, sent questions along the lines of kind of like, hey, why not go super optimistic and like do a show which is like something like how the Blazers can finish as a top 5 record in the West, or what would have to go right for the Blazers to be like a home court advantage type team, or avoid the play-in and be like a true playoff team in the West. And if you've listened to the show, if you're a long-term listener to the show, you just know that I'm not that type of sort of rosy lie about it optimist. I am what some might call a realist and some might call a pessimist and others might call a hater. But what I think maybe is the most accurate there is that I'm someone who doesn't like to lie about how I feel, right? Like I'll sometimes put on the mask and you know, give the people what they want. But for the most part, if I hold an opinion strongly, or I've developed an opinion by, you know, putting a lot of careful thought into something, I'm just going to keep it there, right? Like I'm going to tell you what I think, and I'm going to try to tease out the reasons why I think that. So and I sent Tim that email that said exactly this. I don't think the Blazers can make the playoffs. I don't think they have enough talent to make the playoffs. They are worse than they were last year, and they were pretty much bad from December on last year. Good offense, terrible defense. They're probably going to be worse on offense, terrible defense again. So like, it would be disingenuous to me to sort of pitch to you like, here's why, here's what it's going to take for the Blazers to be the 5th best team in the West. I don't think they can do that. But I have, with some thought, some consideration, kind of reached a point where I know what the best case, or for me, like a hopeful and enjoyable case for the Blazers would look like this season. That's what I want to talk about to open the show. First couple segments, that's what we'll talk about. Then we'll close the show talking about Nikola Jovic. He's playing well in the World Cup, and I want to talk about whether that changes the Miami Heat's potential trade offer for Damian Lillard. Heat fans, I'll put the timestamp in the episode so you can skip ahead. But with Jovic actually going to play, you're listening to September 1st show, Friday, September 1st show. He's going to play overnight. So I'm recording this on Thursday evening. He's going to play overnight. So by the time you listen to this, he will have already played. He's probably going to do like a 360 dunk from half court, but we'll talk about that to close the show. Let's talk best case, worst case, or excuse me, just best case for the Blazers. So I don't think they can make... I don't think they make the playoffs. I just don't think they have the talent to make the playoffs. They haven't not attempted to add much talent to this roster. They're pretty much very blatantly committed to going young. They have the youngest roster in the league. Even with Damian Lillard on the roster, their average age is under 25. They're young. They're a young group. I'm assuming at some point Damian Lillard plays for another franchise, whoever that might be, at some point this year, whether that's to start the season, whether that's in December, whether that's in January, whether it happens in February. I do not believe Damian Lillard, I very strongly do not believe Damian Lillard will be on the Blazers roster at the end of the season. So some of this is baked in with the idea that Dame's going to be gone. But I think what the best case scenario looks like is a lot like Dame's rookie season. And I don't mean to draw a direct parallel to that, because I think that team was just like straight up better. They had an established all-star in LaMarcus Aldridge, who was just like a straight up very good basketball player. They had Wesley Matthews, who had been really, had been guarded Kobe and Carmelo and got in the playoffs and got paid for it. Nicholas Batum, who was coming into his own. Damian Lillard, who was, on pace to have a Hall of Fame career. And even as a rookie, he was going to win unanimous Rookie of the Year. And he was good right away, literally from game one, from the jump. So, like, that team that's the 2012-2013 season. Shout out to my listeners who were like in the 6th grade when that season started. I'm glad. Thank you for listening. I appreciate you. So maybe you don't remember it very well because you were in middle school. But during that season, during the 2012-2013 season, the Blazers were not like they just weren't going to be good. They were, like I said, they had the makings of a team that was going to be good, because the following season they won 54 games in a playoff series. But that season they went 33-49, and some of it was depth. A lot of it was just they didn't have the right center. They had a rookie Joel Freeland, they had a rookie Myers Leonard, and they were relying a lot on JJ Hickson. They didn't have the depth, like Sasha Pavlovich was playing a lot of minutes for them. They were a team that was figuring it out. So it's not a perfect comparison to what the team is going to be this year, but the vibes and the direction could be something that I think looks like the best case scenario for the Blazers. And let me expand on that. That team wasn't supposed to be good, right? They had pulled the plug and kind of trade away a bunch of parts and pivoted off a veteran roster. It's the end of the B-Roy era and heading into what's next. And they make a trade to get a top. They get their, they have their own pick, which is in the lottery, and then they have make a trade to get a top 6 draft pick and Damian Lillard. A pretty good deal for Jared Wallace. Like, they weren't supposed to be good. This was the beginning of a rebuild, right? But they hung around. And heading into February, they were 25-23. They were a game and a half out of 8th place on February 4th. Like that, that's 48 games into the year. That's almost 50 games into the year. They were right there, right? They were right there chasing Utah, chasing Houston for that last spot in the playoffs. They didn't finish the season like that. They lost 5 straight heading into the All-Star break. They closed the season on a 13-game losing streak, and they went from a team that was going to be like right in that 40-win range and have a chance to a team that was pretty bad. They ended up with 33 wins. Drawing a direct comparison is not what I want to do to this year's team, but I think something like the best case scenario is a team that's like plucky and better than you think, and they're better than you think because the young rookie point guard is like ready to go early in his career, right? Is that Scoot is like, Dame was, I don't know if Scoot's going to be unanimous Rookie of the Year, pretty safe bet that he won't be, but like I think the chances that he's like an impactful, good rookie is pretty solid. Most rookies are bad, right? Most young players are net negatives. Even the most special players like Cade Cunningham, John Morant come to mind, like lead guards who are like clearly going to be very good in the league. And I think both John Morant is good, and I think Cade Cunningham is going to be very good. They were negatives, like even as rookies, right? Like, it's just like, you don't have the efficiency. You're just not there on defense. You're still kind of figuring out, even if the promise is so obvious. And I think Scoot might be that. But the best case scenario for me, for the Blazers, is that they're plucky and tough. And when you get into the new year, they're still kind of in the hunt. And that means that they're competitive every night. They can beat every bad team that they play. And when they play against the really good teams, they've got a puncher's chance. If they're 25-23, 48 games in, like, that's going to be a fun team to root for. And I think something akin to that, the best case scenario, which, you get 50 or 60 games of, hey, this is a competitive team that I enjoy watching, is probably the best case scenario for this group. Like, they're trying to be bad. The front office is like, they built a team that is not attempting to be a competitive team in the league. Like, it's just like, just look at the roster. So if they overachieve, it'll be really rewarding and fun. I don't think, as listener Tim and a few others, but Tim is the first email I remember from about this. It's like, I don't think there's a world in which they are like, oops, they're great, because I don't feel comfortable saying that like Scoot Henderson is going to be like a top 10 point guard, top 10 player at his position or whatever as a rookie. That seems a little rich. But if they're tougher than you think, and competitive on most nights, competitive into the new year, that's pretty fun. And maybe they don't take the exact same path as that 2012, 2013 Blazers. But if you kind of speed up the timeline, it allows you to make different decisions to, get to continue to be competitive. I think there's like a pretty reasonable case to be made that the Blazers should be awful on purpose. But it's not fun to watch awful on purpose. It's fun to watch teams overachieve. And I think that is what the best case scenario looks like, is a team that is hanging around longer than you think. So what has to go right for them to hang around longer than you think? Talk about that in the second segment. First, I want to tell you about FanDuel. It's football season. It's a coming. It starts next week, next Thursday. In fact, September 7th. Get ready. So why not take advantage of the looming NFL season with great offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers to FanDuel can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. It's the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use. You can bet on everything from spreads to player props to whatever else you're looking for. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Kick off the NFL season with an offer you won't want to miss. That's FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL. All right. So, if I think the best case scenario for the Blazers is something like being competitive into the first 50 games of the season, and then, life catches up with them and they end up with a top 5 pick anyways, that is like probably the best case scenario, right? Is that they draft CJ McCollum, except the 6'10", 6'10" CJ McCollum. That's if that player's available, go get him. Is Ron Holland that? In any case, what has to go right for the Blazers to be plucky, to be better than you think? Some of it is pretty obvious. I don't mean to make this like reading hieroglyphics. I am merely someone with opinions and a microphone, right? I like, you can guess it. If you're listening to a Blazers podcast in September, you know what has to go right for them to be good. Anthony Simons has to continue to be a really good player. Again, sorry, caveat before I get into the obvious stuff. This is assuming that Damian Lillard, I think there's a world in which, I don't actually think this, but I think there's a world, there's a non-zero chance that, non-letero chance that is, that Dame is on the team and plays well and they win because Damian Lillard is a really good basketball player. And then that causes some confusion about what the direction of the team is because they've clearly chosen one, right? But like I said at the top of the episode, I'm assuming at some point, in the next couple weeks, the next couple months, Damian Lillard is no longer on the roster. So what has to go right for once the sort of that post-Dame era, the next era, for this team to sort of hang around into February and pushing up against March? Anthony Simons has to take that next step. He's good. Like, he's a good basketball player. He can really shoot it. He's one of the best shooters in the league. He can shoot off the bounce. He can shoot as a catch and shoot, just like spread on the wing. Variety of jumpers, shoots on the move, has developed a pretty good in-between game with floaters and running baby hooks. His playmaking has, while it still leaves some to be desired, a little bit to be desired for sure. Like, he's taken leaps and bounds from what he was 2 seasons ago. Like, he's a good basketball player, but for the Blazers to stick around, he needs to continue that pace, right? Like, he needs to be a 25 a night type of guy and continue his efficiency. Yeah, duh. You knew that, right? Anthony Simons is currently the best guard on the Blazers roster. Whether he's part of the true next step, of the non-Dames, he is so clearly their best guard. If the simple math is your best players have to play well, hence Jeremy Grant has to with added volume, right? He's going to have to continue his efficiency that he showed last season. Last year, he had the most efficient shooting season of his career. He was freaking great. Scored 20 points per game on 40% shooting from 3. He's going to have a different role, particularly in the post-Dame role. I mean, again, we don't know what the return is going to be, so obvious asterisks on this, but assume it's something within the realm of what we've kind of guessed it might be over the last few months here on this podcast. They're not trading for a star. So like Jeremy Grant is going to play a ton of minutes because they do not have many players who can play power forward in the NBA. So he's going to get leaned on to play, 37 plus minutes a night. He's going to have a lot more share of the offense. And for the Blazers to hang around and be good into the new year, into February, like approaching the trade deadline as still a competitive above 500-y type team, he's going to have to continue that efficiency as his volume goes up. That's a bigger ask than Anthony Simons taking the next step. Anthony Simons 25, right? Or 24. Like he has clearly room to grow, and he's gotten better significantly better in the last 2 seasons. And it seems to be sort of cleaner for Anthony Simons to improve than to Jeremy Grant just to like take the most efficient shooting season of your career and add 15% to the volume. If players could just like scale up their volume and not lose efficiency, everyone would be a star in the league. It's just not that simple of a thing. But for things to go right, Ant has to take that step. Jeremy Grant has to continue the efficiency. Jusuf Nurkic has to stay healthy. If they're going to be good, Jusuf Nurkic has to play, I don't know, every game, but like 90% of the games up until that sort of 50 game mark. He's got to play 45 of them, 46 of them. They don't have any big man depth. They chose to do this. They chose to not add centers. They sat out free agency on their own. Joe Cronin can say that he chose to sat out because he was uncertain what was going to happen with Dame, and he's waiting for something to happen. But if he says that, and he says that they're willing to not trade Dame, then he made a freaking choice to not upgrade the front court. And he did. The only other center they have on the roster is Moses Brown. They need Nurk to play. They just need him to play. They need him to play and play and play and play and play. Nurk doesn't need to take like massive steps forward for them to be a 500-y team. Frankly, I don't think there's much more that Nurk can add to his game. I think he is what he is at this point. He can maybe sharpen around the edges, but I think he's going to be an inefficient finisher and a guy who's slow laterally with not a lot of vertical pop. But he's a gigantic person. He's a good screen setter. He's got he can pass a little bit, and he's and being big and in the way will be the thing he is most valuable at for the Blazers, because once he's out of there, they don't have enough big in the way guys to even prop up a defense to get like close to respectable. Nurk's got to play. That's what it's got to go right. And then the young guys have to get good. Scoot Henderson has to be good in a hurry. Like it can't take Scoot until January. Under this scenario, it can't take Scoot until January to be like, okay, now I've seen 35 NBA games. I kind of know how it works, right? Like he needs to hit the ground running and be really good early in the season. And Shaedon Sharpe, the ascension that it looked like he was capable of making at the end of last season. Now he's not going to have the same role that he had the last 10 games, but like, okay, yeah, this dude is more than just kind of like he is destined to be a high level starter in this league and maybe something more. He needs to go ahead and show that early in the season, right? Shaedon Sharpe needs to not have this sort of the real trajectory of NBA players is that it fluctuates, right? Like it is development and growth is neither guaranteed nor linear, right? Your development is just a scatter plot. You move all up and down the grid because good here. Okay, this fell off a little bit. Now I got to tighten this up. And it's like, not everyone's just going that straight line. I don't know enough about math to know what type of graph that is, but some of you out there know. Shout out to the quadratic formula. But, Shaedon Sharpe needs to continue his growth, and it needs to be mostly linear. He needs to not backslide at all. In year 2, he needs to build on what he showed at the end of last season. If you get that, Anthony Simons takes the next step. Jeremy Grant continues his efficiency on more volume. Jusuf Nurkic just plays every night. Scoot Henderson is good right away. Like, I think Scoot Henderson's going to be a very good NBA player, but good right away in this scenario. And Shaedon Sharpe continues to take those steps where it's like, yeah, this dude needs to play, and this is an NBA starter. Doesn't matter if he's 20, he's that good. And Blazers that's how they stick around. That's how they're plucky. That's how they're better than you think. That's how they end up 25-23 in the middle of, or in early February. And you're like, I thought this team was going to stink. They've been pretty fun. Anything can happen from there. But if they're going to follow what I think is the best case scenario, which is something akin to Dame's rookie year, I think that's what has to go right. Okay. To close the show, I got a bunch of questions. This is what I mentioned was listener guided. A couple different people have emailed me this question about Nikola Jovic. He plays for the Miami Heat. So what the heck are we talking about him on the Blazers for? I don't know. Are the Heat and the Blazers connected? Listen, Jovic has been really good in FIBA. And what I want to ask is, does his World Cup play, does it mean anything for a potential Damian Lillard trade? That's what we'll talk about to close the show. Join me in that third segment, won't you? Still a pass first point guard. Still Mike Richmond. You're still listening to Locked On Blazers. Or if you're a Heat fan who skipped ahead, what's up? Welcome to the program. Okay. Nikola Jovic has been really good in, as of this record, in the FIBA World Cup for Serbia. It's been really good. They've played 3 games. They play overnight tonight. They play at 1 a.m. West Coast time. I'm not going to stay up till 3 to record a podcast. And the way this was going to work was it just wasn't going to work out for your boy. Nikola Jovic's playing schedule wasn't going to work out for your boy. It happens. So when he does, as mentioned early in the show, when he does do a 360 dunk from half court tonight, just leave it in the YouTube comments. Tell me I missed it, because I'm not recording that. But Jovic has been good. The Serbia's undefeated. They've played China, Puerto Rico, and South Sudan. And Jovic is averaging 17 points, 2.7 boards, 3 assists. He's shooting 8 of 12 from 3 in the tournament. That's good for 66.66666 repeating percent. He's been solid all over. 10 of 12 from 2. Like, he's just 7 of 9 for the free throw line. He's making shots. He had 9 3-2 against China. Followed that with 17 3-4 against Puerto Rico, and then a monster game against South Sudan. 25 points, 9 of 9, 4 of 4 from 3 to go with 2 boards, 3 assists, plus 34 in a blowout beatdown. So a couple listeners said, "Hey Mike, you watching the World Cup? You seen this guy? Does this change what the ask and offer might be from the Heat? Does this make the Miami Heat's offer more appealing?" And the short answer is no. The short answer is no. The long answer is what follows here in this podcast. But China, Puerto Rico, and South Sudan are just not, it's not NBA level competition. Is it meaningless? Absolutely not. Is it meaningful? Absolutely not. It's somewhere in the middle. It is good to play good. I think that is undeniable. And, shooting 8 of 12 from 3 across 3 games, if that's someone his size. Like, and I'm not going to, allow me to tell you the truth. I haven't watched these games in full. I watch his highlights, but I haven't sat down to watch Serbia, China, and Serbia, Puerto Rico. Like, sorry. It's just not how, it's not how it worked for me. So I've watched a bunch of highlights of him. I've probably seen every bucket he's made. I've certainly seen all the threes that he's made in this tournament. Playing well, and he's big, and he's intriguing. But, and I'll say this, for the Heat's offer to the Blazers, and if you're like sort of new to this, you're living under a rock, and you're for some reason listening to this podcast in September, Damian Lillard wants to get traded to the Miami Heat and only Miami Heat. They don't have a super appealing offer, but Jovic is their best young prospect that they can offer by a lot. Tyler Hero is that, right? But Tyler Hero doesn't fit with what the Blazers want to do. Even if you think he's way better than Anthony Simons, then you have to figure out what to do with Anthony Simons. It's just Hero and the Blazers are not a good match. So of the non-hero candidates, and that's what I should have said to start this, then of the non-hero options that the Heat can offer, Jovic is clearly their best upside prospect. Hero is he's not yet 24. He has signed a second contract, so I don't know if that still makes him a prospect in the league, but he's a very good young basketball player. I don't mean to get it twisted there. So Jovic's appeal could potentially sweeten how the sweeten the pot for the Heat. Maybe could it grease the wheels for the Blazers and like kind of get this trade going? I don't think, like I said, I don't think the World Cup games are meaningful. I don't think they're meaningless. But playing well is playing well. If he played poorly, you would say, yeah, he's really struggling. He's really struggling in the World Cup. He's played well. It's like he's balling in the World Cup. Like those are undeniable numbers. 25 and making all your shots. 25 on 9 and 9 shooting. That's a game. That is a game. Undeniable. Pretty much against anybody, right? Like even if the competition is low level competition, that's a game. But 3 games can't possibly change the Blazers' opinion on this trade. It can't. It cannot. And whatever he does against Italy overnight tonight, it cannot. I mean, if he has like, I guess 80, I'll put it at 80. If he scores, you know what? I'll lower it. If Nikola Jovic scores 40 against Italy, then yeah, it changes the calculation. But like, it's just not enough. It's just too small of a sample size. It's lower than NBA competition. It reminds me of Billy Hernangomez balling for Spain and winning the MVP of the tournament. Billy Hernangomez is very good for Spain, and he is a borderline rotation player in the league. It's not always a great comparison, right? Like Billy Hernangomez is a pro, a longtime pro. He's going to play 15 years of professional basketball, but it's not like dominating Rudy Gobert and FIBA translated to being a dominant player in the NBA. It is not 1-to-1 by any means. Is Jovic stock on the rise a little bit for the summer? Sure, it's on the rise a little bit. I'd say the graph's going up. We're talking graphs. Shout out to Kevin Durant in this show. I think his graph's going up, but the appeal of Nikola Jovic is not 3 games. The appeal of Nikola Jovic is his size and it's just like general upside and all of the things he's done leading up to this, right? Like you better hope the Blazers scout includes more than just 3 games at FIBA, right? 3 games of the World Cup in the summer of 2023. All of the things that went into it would change sort of the appeal of that youngster. Does it help the Heat's case? Sure. Does it change, and there's some sort of hardline people on both sides, right? There's some hardline Blazer fans who think any trade with the Heat is terrible garbage and that even entertaining the idea on this podcast should put me in prison. Take them away. And there are some hardline Heat fans that think the Blazers are, being unreasonable and that they will take, a highly protected first round pick in 2041, Kyle Lowry's contract and Nikola Jovic and go home and shut up. And I think there's certainly people on both sides, but like here's the middle truth. There might not be a better offer out there than what Miami is offering for Damian Lillard. And the Heat offer is pretty underwhelming. If both of those are true, Jovic's upside in FIBA matters a little bit more because if you scour who's going to make deals for Dame, and I believe it was reported by Mark Spears on a podcast hosted by Aaron Fentress of The Oregonian this week that Jason Tatum had recruited Damian Lillard. And I think that was already out there, to be quite honest. I don't think that's new news. I believe Chris Haynes reported that like 6 weeks ago. I don't have that for sure, but I believe Chris Haynes reported that like 6 weeks ago. That Tatum was calling Dame and it just didn't work out, right? It just doesn't make sense. But like I'm talking that level of team, right? Philly, Boston, the Clippers. I don't know if they're that level of team, but like the good teams that are going to chase Damian Lillard, they don't have super appealing assets. That's the truth of it. And the teams that do have super appealing assets are probably not in the range to make a play for Damian Lillard at age 33 with how much he has left on his contract. So Nikola Jovic playing well in FIBA matters because if you go back to the Heat and you say, give me your best offer, and it has to include Jovic. It has to because we already thought he had upside and he's played a really nice summer and we think he can build on it. That's the only thing it changes is that it becomes a non-negotiable for the Blazers that he has to be included. But his play in FIBA, at least to date, does not really change anything. What changes the reality of it is that they're at a standstill because the Blazers want a better offer that might not exist, and they're in no rush to take one before they find out for sure that better offer doesn't exist. Jovic can ball out, and I hope he does. He's a fun player. You remember, if you listen to the show regularly, that we did that crossover episode. I did a crossover episode with Wes and David of Locked On Heat. We did like a mock trade discussion, and it got to the point where David, who was playing the part of the Heat GM, said, you got to choose between one of the youngsters, Nikola Jovic or Jaime Jaquez at the end of the deal. And I said, I like Jaime Jaquez more, but the upside is just so much higher with Jovic. So that's where you got to go. And that's kind of, I think, like if that was true 2 weeks ago, last week, I guess, a week ago, I recorded that. It's still true now, even after a nice run at FIBA. He's still the young Heat player, the young Heat prospect with non-Tyler Hero division with the most upside. So it doesn't change too much of the calculation. It just puts a finer point on what the calculation is. Yeah, this is a big dude with some outside shooting potential. He's a wing, right? Like he's like a 3. He's not a big physical player, right? He's a wing. He's a perimeter player. Intriguing big perimeter player. The Blazers could use an intriguing big perimeter player. And if they liked Nikola Jovic in early August, and they probably like him in early September, regardless of what happened in the FIBA World Cup. Does that make the trade closer? No. No, we'll be talking about this forever. Talking about this. Dame's going to finish his career in Portland. We'll just talk about him getting traded until 2027. I will say this. I'm not going to watch this game tonight against Italy, but Serbia plays the Dominican Republic on Sunday morning. Little early, honestly, for West Coast time, but I'll probably watch it on replay. The FIBA World Cup's been fun and enjoyable, and I will continue to keep my eye on it, and we'll talk about it here. A programming note, though, there's going to be 2 episodes next week. I am going out of town, a family vacation, our last of the summer, and then we'll be back, and then we'll get rolling on previews, team previews, and as we do the player capsules that we do for every player on the roster. If you're a longtime listener to the program, or if you listened last year, leading up, player capsules, previews of every player on the roster heading into the season, getting you set for training camp. They're fun, useful, and good to look back on to see what we thought and how right I was with some of my predictions. Here's one more thing, and a reward for those of you who listen to the end of the program. We're going to do a listener summit, one more this summer. Listener summits are a couple, I've done them 3 or 4 times, and it's when I invite 3 listeners on the program, and you join me for a segment, and we talk what's up with the Blazers. We can talk kind of about whatever. I'll structure it a little bit, and we'll make it happen. You'll have about 8 minutes on the program, but if you are interested, email me at lockedonblazerspod@gmail.com and tell me your favorite 21st century Blazers draft pick. Your favorite draft pick of the Blazers in the 21st century. That is after, we'll say starting with the 2000 draft. I know there's some people who debate the 21st century started in 2001. I don't even understand that. We're talking Y2K and beyond drafts. Send me your favorite Trail Blazers draft pick of the 21st century, and I'll pick some listeners to be on a listener summit next week. We are going to record this next week on the evening, Pacific time, in the evening on Wednesday and Thursday. So I'll reach out to you. We'll coordinate. We'll make it happen. It's going to be fun. If that doesn't work for some folks, maybe we'll push it back to the next week, but we're going to make some decisions next week. So email me, lockedonblazerspod@gmail.com. That is Listener Summit if you want to get involved. Do me a favor, tell your friends about the show, because we're doing it at multiple times a week all summer long, and then back to 5 days a week when we get going in the middle of September. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.